ask a question, just for you to know that this event is recorded. And that would also mean that the recording will become available in a couple of days through the live events section of the MOOC. So once again, good afternoon, everyone, and very welcome to the second live event of this MOOC, the MOOC part of the project Teach Europe, entitled A Classroom's Roadmap to Europe. So right now on Module 3 of the course, so time flies, we're already halfway through the course. So as you may know, my name is Eugenia Casariego, and I'm the course coordinator. I have as well with me Maria Elena. You would like to say hi from your side as well?
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all here.
Nice to see you all indeed. So please keep typing on the chat where you're connecting from. In the meantime, I want to give you a little bit of a recap of where we are at the moment, since this is the second live event of the course. I thought it's also a nice time to give some reminders. So we started the course on the 10th of March. Perhaps some of you have already started and joined from the very beginning of the course on Module 1 that we opened on the 10th of March. Last week we dealt with the topic of Europe in daily life. We opened the module 2. We already saw quite a few of the learning scenarios of the project Teach Europe, and in this week we have opened already module 3, where we are dealing or talking a little bit more on the topic of active citizenship and how to bring active citizenship into the classroom as well. So as module 3 of the course, and next week we're opening the fourth and last course module of the course. Just as a quick reminder, this module 4 is a bit less dense in content. As you also may have read through the course, in this module you'll also not have any more learning scenarios to study. So all of the 12 learning scenarios have already been presented. So that way in the next module you're going to have a little bit more time to prepare for the final course assignment that you're going to have to complete if you want to obtain a course certificate. As well, of course, I want to remind you that there's what we like to call a grace period at the end of module 4, which means that you're going to have an extra week and a half for you to finish the final assignment in case you want to obtain the course certificate that Maria Elena and I very much encourage you to complete. So I'll talk a bit more about the final assignment in just a minute, but just for you to know now where we are a bit in the course. So you may know that we already had a first live event on the 13th of March. If you were not able to join us, then you're very welcome to access the recording, as I said, on the live event page of the course. Before I talked a little bit more about the final course assignment, just as a reminder, I also would like to thank you all for your participation in the course activities. I was just talking this morning with Maria Elena about how nice it is to see all of the Padlets so populated with your comments, your questions, your thoughts and your reflections, and the course forum as well. So I encourage you to keep doing that, and also to keep being in touch and to remain active till the very last module of the course. I think we're creating a very interesting and very enriching community of educators, very motivated to learn on these topics and to also teach for and about Europe. So those are a bit some of my impressions. I don't know, Maria Elena, if you would like to comment a bit on what you've been seeing on the course, or what's your thoughts so far?
Yeah, so basically, I agree with Eugenia. We see very interesting input and thoughts in the Padlets, in the discussion forums, and of course, if you have already enrolled, you might have noticed our teachers, Maria and Otilia, replying to you and sharing their thoughts with you. They're not here today, I think, but we would also like to thank them for their contribution. Um, yeah, I think that's it from my side. Thank you for the interesting and inspiring, I would say, information you have been sharing with us throughout the first two modules so far, and now the third during this week. And keep up with the good work you're doing there.
Indeed, and talking of keeping up with the good work, just a very quick reminder, since this is the last time we can meet live, that indeed the final course assignment is coming up on the 16th of April. So you still have more than 2 weeks to complete that, but we thought it's a good time to give you a bit of a reminder. This assignment is compulsory if you want to obtain a course certificate. We have been sharing since Module 1 some tips and advices on how you can go about completing what we call the learning activity, and also how you can complete the peer review. There's also a rubric that will be used to evaluate this learning activity that you can have and that you can access on the course. Already in the Module 1, you can find these materials, and we recommend that you download them in advance and have them in front of you as you complete the course so that you know what's required in order to finish the course. For those of you who are here, for the 34 of you who have joined us, we have a bit of an exciting news, a bit of a sneak peek of what's coming, and is that you can submit your learning activity for publication. So there's going to be an option for you to nominate your own work, your own learning activity for publication. This will make a selection of some of the best learning activities that have been voluntarily submitted, and we'll create a publication at the end of it. So we encourage you, and we hope this motivates you as well to pay careful attention to this final activity. As I said, it's completely voluntary and completely optional. You do not have to nominate your work, and when you submit your activity for completing the course, it is not automatically considered for nomination. You will have a separate form through which you can nominate your work. All of this will become way clearer on Module 4. And just as again, as a reminder, it's only in Module 4 when you can complete the learning activity. Maybe some of you have already finished and have already finished the task. That's great. And so next week is the moment when you can start submitting your activity. And once again, when you can actually nominate your work for publication. But I think we have taken already enough time. So let's get started with today's event. So the idea that we want to have, the idea that we have for today is to create a bit of a space to discuss these learning scenarios that you have been viewing through the course. At this stage, you have already viewed 12 learning scenarios. In order to develop these learning scenarios, we have counted with the support of many teachers across Europe. We have some of these teachers here with us today who have helped us pilot these learning scenarios and develop these learning scenarios. So they are going to discuss with you their impressions, their thoughts, and their ideas on what has it been like to pilot these learning scenarios. I'm also very excited to say that we have here with us some colleagues from the Council of the European Union who will also provide us some further thoughts and ideas on resources that you can use to continue implementing a European perspective on your classroom. So I think there's a fantastic chance as well to go beyond the Teach Europe project and also think how else you can continue implementing this European perspective. So there will also be at the end of the event presenting some resources that you can actually use for free, as always, of course. So we have here with us Maria Cristina Mocanu, who is a teacher from Romania. We have as well with us Isabel and Anna, that teachers from Portugal, that will also be presenting their experience on the piloting of the learning scenarios. And we have with us as well Joan, who developed one of the learning scenarios and also piloted some of the learning scenarios. So together with them, we will get some insights into how to bring these learning scenarios into practice into the classroom. So this is all from, I think I've spoken enough. I'm just going to give you the floor, Maria Cristina, just a reminder for you to keep active on the chat and let us know your thoughts and ideas. Maria Cristina, I'm going to stop sharing and now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eugenia. Nice to see everyone who is here, and I'm happy to see that there are almost 40 people joining already. I will now share my screen. Hopefully, we can confirm it's okay. You can see what I'm
We can see your
presenting.
screen. Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully now everything is fine.
Yeah.
I entitled my very short presentation Teaching for European Identity because I particularly enjoyed this difference between teaching about Europe and teaching for Europe. So the scenario that I've chosen to test last year was the fourth one, Searching for Common European Identity. And we're going to be looking for 3 or 4 minutes at some implementation outcomes in my classroom. As Eugenia was saying earlier, I teach English as a foreign language, primarily to high school students in Romania. Therefore, this was my target group. There were around 30 16-year-olds who participated in the implementation. Um, the first question when applying the scenario was obviously, what is identity? And what you can see here, and the numbers indicate the number of students that have chosen the same thing, is their responses, obviously. Most of them see identity as being related to culture, traditions, to their own country, and for obvious reason, their identity is also related to peace. Other words there were nationality, ID cards, and so on and so forth. So basically, starting from this question of whether or not they can define their identity, um, we then delved into the scenario. And what I did here is a bit of a drawing. I'm a very visual teacher, therefore I hope you enjoy my colors here. But I'll explain in a minute what they mean. So the scenario that we applied uh, had these five major parts. The initial one was the brainstorming, where obviously we discussed the topic of identity. And as you can see, there's a regular thumbs up there, meaning that students really enjoyed having this conversation and have confessed actually that they don't do it too often. So this was a very good opportunity for them to discuss identity. Then we had the four corners, which you are probably familiar with from the scenario from the course, which they've also enjoyed. It was an activity that we have been doing a number of times on various topics. So it was quite familiar for them. However, the topic, the sentences themselves were not familiar. So again, they were quite exciting. The part about research and discussion on the topic of European identity was obviously another highlight because they had the chance to find out new things related to European identity. They particularly enjoyed the role play, and because I did see some of the questions that Eugenia sent this morning, um, that you have asked, I will say that while implementing, I modified the role play a little bit, turning it into a guessing game, which made it even more enjoyable for students. Eventually, and obviously there's always something to improve in all these scenarios, they didn't particularly enjoy the poster making, but I'm just thinking, and I've actually reflected on that quite a lot. It must have been their age. As I told you, they were about around 16 at the time. So poster making is not really their thing anymore. Instead, what I plan on doing this year when I'm going to re-implement with a different class is asking them to use some some digital tools to make some infographics, to make some other types of materials that they could then use. So this was the whole story, let's say, of implementing the scenario. What I did was take around, I think, two different English classes, and we managed to cover everything that was in the plan. Hopefully this works. Yes. I'm not going to read all this, but they're just here for you to reflect a little bit upon. I did notice that my students managed to develop their skills quite a lot as a result of implementing the scenario, and as well as research skills. But furthermore, they managed to discuss European values, as I said, that they do not regularly discuss in, at least not in Romania. I don't know if in other countries there are classes that deal with that, but in Romania we rarely discuss that. So it was quite exciting for them to do that. Eventually, and I know I'm supposed to have 5 minutes, so I'm going to make it brief. Um, I wanted to point out a major difference that I realized as a teacher implementing this scenario. Uh, you can obviously understand that I'm the tiny figurine in my left-hand side, an EU grown person who works with EU-born students. And implementing this scenario actually brought this realization to me that they see European identity in a very different way than we teachers tend to see. We see it as a growing ability of us feeling European. We learn about Europe while they know they are already European. So they see this more as of a native feature. And this was one of the moments when I actually had this sort of a teaching epiphany, if you want, understanding that it's easier to talk to teenagers nowadays about European identity, having been born in Europe, basically. I wasn't, and neither were probably most of you. Um, to sum it all up, I would say that I'm going to probably implement some of the other scenarios as well, because I felt that this one was the right choice for the beginning. But then, having gone through the course, I realized that all of them can actually be adapted to suit everyone's needs, and especially teenagers' needs if I'm to think about myself. Therefore, I really hope you enjoy working with the scenarios. And if there are any questions related to the one that I implemented, I'm open to answering. And sorry, Eugenia, for the 2 minutes that I took. More
No, thank
than
you so much, Maria Cristina, and thanks as well for sharing your teacher epiphany. I think it's very insightful and very interesting. I hadn't also myself thought about it that way, so it's very interesting as well to see. And this, I think, the interesting part of teachers using these learning scenarios is to see that you also think about them in a different way. Perhaps I will bring you and ask you one of the questions that we got on the Padlet that I think is quite relevant to exactly this point. And one of the questions that I read on the Padlet is that says the following: how do you ensure that a European perspective resonates with the students who may not have a strong connection to the EU policies or with European identities?
well, what happened in my case, because not all of them were so enthusiastic as it always happens, what happened was the whole discussion part was really relevant. Once you give or you create a safe space and you enable them to share opinions, they might have conflicts initially, but it is generally the ones that have more arguments in favor of preserving their European identity that will maybe convince the others. I don't think it's quite easy for teachers to convince students of any, or to, I don't know, make them believe, but it's their peers that do that. So once you allow for a safe space of discussion, I think that that might work.
Thanks, Maria Cristina. That's a very good answer, I feel as well. It's indeed not in on our side to just kind of push that into them, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
I liked as well that you brought in the word peers, right? Also they co-construct the knowledge within the class as well, especially when it comes to identity. It's nothing that you establish on your own. It's something that, as we've seen through the course and especially in module 2, that is something that's built with others as well. So I think that's a very interesting way to kind of focus that answer. Thanks so much, Maria Cristina. I will give now the floor
Thank you.
to Anna and Isabel, who are connecting from Portugal. Hello, Anna. Hello, Isabel. Can you hear see us?
Hello, all.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, hello.
So, I would like to add some things that happened during the piloting of European values and citizenship. It was very easy for me to develop this module. And the reason was that our students had already been immersed in EU curriculum. As I already wrote in the Padlet, our students are used to develop EU content since they are 12, because we have a special subject which is called citizenship, where they have to develop EU values, also or ONU, how do we call it, ONU? United Nations values. It was easy for us. And we also have the subject of history and geography when they are 15 years old, where they have a lot of issues about and very dense, I would say, issues about European Union. It was also very easy to develop all these, to pilot all these, because we went to Brussels with our students of political science. I am the teacher of political science, and we had the possibility to go to Parlamentarium, I think, the great museum with multimedia information, and so it was very easy. We didn't develop the role playing, because the students were already in the final year, and we thought it was not necessary to develop this kind of activity, but it was very important for us, the final activity. And the final activity had two different things. The first one was that they developed a very a synthesis of all they learn in the posters. And we think it is a very, very good idea to have the posters where they can, in a simple image, put everything that they learned in the piloting module. It was very interesting, that thing. And the other one that was really important was for students to do research about ONGs, about the several organizations. NGOs, sorry. It was really interesting, the research about NGOs, because they took knowledge about very different NGOs. Each group studied a different NGO, and they developed interesting information, and talked with different persons, and it was a moment of creativity and also of information, and understanding that this is not something that is outside, that is only a curriculum. It was very important for the students to understand that they can act, and to act is one of our main concerns here in our school. We developed a lot of projects about acting and not only learning. So we thought it was really useful to develop and pilot the module.
Thanks so much, Anna Isabel, for your also for your input on this. I see as well you answered some of the questions in the Padlet. Thank you very much for that. And I think you also answered one of the questions that we have a lot on the board, which is a lot of people are asking us how to adapt the learning scenarios. And you just mentioned, a very important tip, which is that you looked at the activities and you chose the ones that corresponded to your students' age, and you also chose the one that was the most relevant to you, which in this case was the final activity. And I also like that you mentioned creativity and the skills that your students develop. So do you feel the learning scenarios were also productive within your own curriculum? Did you incorporate these learning scenarios within the curriculum of the subjects of political science?
Yes, because in political science we also have a subject about EU. So it was also very linked to the subject. So it was really a good initiative.
Great to hear. So indeed, as that's a topic, that's something that we're talking now as well through the course, right? Because these learning scenarios can be incorporated as a part of the curriculum, as you did yourselves, Anna Isabel, but it can also be part of extracurricular. But it's also great to hear that for you it worked that way, that you were able to implement it within the curriculum. So any last thoughts or ideas before we pass on the floor to Joan, Anna Isabel? No?
Actually, it also inspired us into what we're going to do in our next Erasmus meeting with students from Poland and Greece. We created a Padlet, and we're asking them for 3 generational insights about belonging to the European Union, so that everyone can reflect while during the meeting on what it means to be a European Union citizen.
Great idea. So you're reflecting with them on European identity, which is something that we're also touching upon with the learning scenarios. That's great. Yeah.
All the
Thanks for
ideas that also come from the scenarios, which were all very interesting.
Thanks for sharing, Isabel. It's also great to see that this translated into another project and that you're bringing schools together from different countries. So thank you so much. These are great examples. Thank you so much to both of you. So Anna and Isabel were also part, same as Maria Cristina, of the piloting of the learning scenarios. So I'm going to give now the floor to Joan, who was with us from the beginning of the project. Designing one of the learning scenarios and also took part in the piloting. So I'm gonna share a slide so you can see what she has prepared for us. Yeah, I think that's working.
Hello everyone. First of all, it's nice to have you as part of this project. But I would like to give a short overview first of my teaching background. Since you can yes, thank you. Since I believe that the nature of the subjects itself and the students you have, the number of students, for example, determines to the extent to which it can be successful or not, the implementation of the learning scenario. But that said, I still believe that the success of implementing a learning scenario depends mostly on the determination and the willingness of the teacher, because these are very flexible, so it's some attention and really catering for the learning pace and learning abilities of your students. You can still transmit to them a certain amount of knowledge. I teach European Studies in a secondary school setting. It is an optional subject, so that of course helps a lot because it is a subject chosen by the students themselves, so they have an interest in it. So it's easier then to engage them and to motivate them to participate. Also, another thing which really helps is the nature of the subject because it covers a wide range of global issues. Okay, so I can use in class and also in the learning scenarios real life situations or contexts that they can relate to and they can understand easier. Also, I make a lot of use of YouTube, for example, clips on YouTube and other resources. And this way it is even more interesting for students. Can you move on to the next slide, please? All the learning scenarios, I implemented 3, but all of them, more or less, can be used in the teaching of European studies because they are very much in line with the curriculum. The only thing I believe is against us as teachers of European studies is that a lot of new subjects have been introduced. This is positive and negative at the same time because it's positive because students have more choice now, but it means that European studies classes are becoming smaller and smaller. This is a drawback, especially when you try to make an activity in class. For example, some of the learning scenarios had teamwork or other activities which involve groups of students. If I have 3 students in a class, for example, this limits my possibilities of making that activity. So I have to find an alternative activity. And that is a drawback. It's one of the challenges I found in implementing the scenarios. Can you move to the next, please? As I said, the number of students is very low, sometimes between 3 and 10 students, and that limits what you can do. But still, if you want to get the message across, you can still adapt and find other ways of getting students familiar to the topic. So that's why these this project is very important because it will reach a wider number of students. And as EU citizens, it's important for us that we are familiar to topics related to the European Union. The challenges, as I said, the number of students is often low, and that limits what can be done as group work activities. Also, time is an issue because you can only get into as deep as to a certain extent. You cannot go deeper into the topic as much as you like because time is against you. There are too many topics to cover in class during the scholastic year. There are also school outings, which then further limit the time available, and that can be an issue in class. Okay. Another thing is that in class, I have students with different abilities. So some of the topics in the learning scenarios are easily to grasp, but others, which are more abstract concepts like human rights, for example, some students find them harder to grasp. And again, as I said, time is an issue. So you have only a certain amount of time that you can really give examples, show them videos, so that they can understand the topic well. Also, some of the topics are controversial and sensitive in nature, so we have to be very, very careful. But that said, I agree with what you said about safe environment, so that they can feel free to express themselves and to communicate their opinions to others. The benefits, please. Um, I found that apart from obtaining knowledge on the EU, the students became more aware of their part. They have to the part they play in as active citizens, both on a local level and on a European level. You make these learning scenarios made them think more about as persons, as individuals, what can they do? Also, students understood that the fundamental values of the EU are similar to those of the democratic societies. So it's not like the EU is something which is there and we are here. It's one and the same thing. The other slide, please. Another thing is the topics covered in European studies and also the ones in the learning scenarios are very dynamic and they are always changing. And that encourages students to participate in discussions and they share their perspectives. Okay. And since our classes are multicultural, it's very interesting to see how different viewpoints um, are coming from different cultural backgrounds. Also, I feel that these learning scenarios and European studies in general, they encourage the acquisition of the 21st century skills. For example, one of my learning scenarios that I implemented in class was about human rights. Of course, this will encourage critical thinking, problem solving, and other 21st century skills, which are very important in today. Okay. Um, Another thing is that some of the topics which I dealt with in the learning scenarios, students had already covered to some extent in previous European studies topics or social studies classes, so that I could build on their prior knowledge, okay, and extend their knowledge on the topic. And I found this really important. Personally, as a teacher, I found this exercise also very beneficial because sometimes, like, I have been teaching the topic for many years, and you are sort of set in your ways on how to teach the topic. But when implementing the learning scenarios of others, you could see a different approach of how to teach the same topic, which was, I think, very fruitful, both for me and for the students. So that is more or less what I have to say about this experience. I was seeing some of the comments on the Padlet, and yes, there was very well about adapting these scenarios for different students, different classes. Again, as I said, I think it depends on the willingness and commitment on the teacher, because if you really are willing, you will find a way to get the message across.
Thanks so much, Joan. Especially, I think it's a very nice concluding point. I'm always that you just mentioned right now that it depends on the teacher's willingness and also commitment to talk about these topics. You yourself face the challenge of having a small classroom, and yet you've very successfully found a way to implement the learning scenarios, and completely so. Congratulations as well for that. But I think it's indeed that resonates with one of the key questions in the Padlet, as you were yourself saying right now, about adapting the scenario, right? And once again, I think that's something that we've been discussing as well through the time that we've been having together today, that the learning scenarios are flexible and are adaptable. Also, Anna and Isabel have also mentioned that they are easy to implement, and you found that experience also positive and doable and easy. So I think that's one conclusion that we're slowly seeing through these presentations, right? That there's this way that you can adapt the learning scenarios again, and great point there, Joan, with creativity, but also, as you said, with commitment and also willingness to do that. So thanks so much, Joan. As a reminder, you have the learning scenario that Joan created as well available on the module, and the other ones that she has mentioned in her presentation. So I'm going to give now the floor to Peter and Gerard from the Council of the European Union, who are going to give us an insight into how else you can keep implementing European perspective in the classroom. It's not just with Teach Europe, but there's also plenty of resources and materials available to you all. You're going to see many of these materials already in Module 4, so this is a bit of a sneak peek into some of the resources that we'll be promoting in Module 4. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. Can you hear me well? Yes, you can.
Yes, we can.
So thanks for inviting us. I'm Gerard Ross, and together with my colleague, Petar Natsev, we work at the General Secretariat of the Council of the European Union, which is one of the key European institutions. I'm happy that Joanne touched upon the point that it's difficult to speak about the European institutions, what they are. And well, this is something we are trying to improve in our department. So if you could move to the next slide, Petar. Our work is precisely, as I said, to make to improve this situation and try to explain a bit better what is the role of these two institutions, the European Council and the Council of the European Union, which have a very similar name, and try to show pupils why it is important that the member states of the European Union come together, negotiate, compromise, and get to agreements. These two institutions are part of the bigger, framework of European institutions with the European Commission and the European Parliament. And we get it. It's sometimes, easy to mess up. The European Council is the institution that brings the heads of state and government together. You might have heard about the leaders gathering these last weeks to discuss about defense. So they do it precisely at the European Council, for instance. And then there's the Council of the EU, which is another institution under the same roof that negotiates and votes on legislation. It's a more technical work that it's done, and it's where the ministers gathered after, a lot of preparation and work on upcoming legislation. So after this brief introduction, as I said, we are trying to do our bit, to explain what these institutions do together with the rest of European institutions. And because of that, we created some educational resources in close cooperation with teachers from all member states. And all these materials are free, ready to use in the classroom, and available in 24 EU languages. Prepare your phones because there are quite many QR codes that will bring you to these resources and different ways to connect with us. So all these materials can be used. You're free, to download them, put them in the context of your classroom. They can be used in curricular and extracurricular activities. And with this, we hope to make your work a bit easier when teaching about the European Union, and specifically about, how and why member states come together. If you could move to the next slide, please, Peter. Thank you. So we have materials for different age groups and educational status, starting with preschool and primary school. We have our wonderful mascot called Yuki, which is this young firefly that you see on the screen. We have a whole educational package around Yuki and the union of the forest, so the union of the animals that come together. This is a package that, through metaphors, explains precisely why the EU was created, what its role, and why people come together instead of, fighting with each other. This package is meant to be for pupils from 7 to 9-year-olds. There are several suggestions to use in the classroom, and the package is composed by a storybook, an activity book, a teacher's guide, and an illustrated map of the European Union with different features. You can find all these materials online, you can download them, but you can also order them, physical copies to use in the classroom. Besides our wonderful Yuki, we also have some other materials. I will speak about them in the next slide, although I'm speaking about secondary school. They encompass also the ages from 9 to 12. So the first one is what we call the civic education package. This is a set of teaching lessons, again, for different ages, ranging from 9 to 12, 12 to 19, 17 to 25, and plus 60. And basically, what we want to do with this package is to help you explain the why, what, and how of the EU and its institutions. How the work that it's done in the European institutions affects the lives of the pupils, aspects that are very close to them, and also explain why certain things cannot be decided by one country alone, and why it is impossible in the current world. So through this package, we can work aspects such as cooperation, solidarity, compromise, negotiation, and you will see that all these concepts are broken down through these lessons. In every case, there are manuals for you to prepare the work, supporting materials that you can use. And in most cases, the lessons are less than 1 hour, meaning that you can easily put them in practice, even if you don't have much time. Also, for the teaching lessons between 12:19 and 17:25, we have lessons for more theoretical learners and more practical learners. Besides the civic education package, we also have another activity called Minister for a Day. And in this case, it's a role play exercise. So I'm happy that Maria Cristina mentioned that this activity, these sort of activities are very positively valued. And in this case, we help the pupils have hands-on experience on how it is to make decisions, in the context of the European institutions, and to negotiate with other ministers on a specific topic. And also you can work aspects such as public speaking, again, negotiation, active listening, and so on. This lesson is longer, of about 2 hours, but still it could be very meaningful for you. Apart from this, we have other activities that you can use in different settings. Some of them are a bit more informal, like the Europa Quest, which is a sort of quiz, with different questions that you can easily play with, different groups of pupils, and they can choose questions on different topics. It's a sort of trivial, and they can bet, let's say, a certain value for questions that are easier or more difficult, and gain points, throughout the game. We also have an app called EU Craft. This is, again, for older students. And well, it's a game basically to negotiate and reach an agreement in the Council of the European Union about real things. So you get to be an EU leader, and you have to discuss with other leaders, see how you can compromise on a topic, how to get people on board on your proposal, and eventually take a decision on a specific topic. And finally, on our website, you can find as well other quizzes and games that you can use for children as of 7 years old. And I forgot to say that for the Europa Quest quiz, we have a version for younger pupils, a simplified version until 14 years old, and then one for older pupils. So this is in a nutshell what we can offer you. Don't hesitate to browse to our website. All these resources can be found as well in the EU Learning Corner. You might have heard about this. It's a portal that gathers materials developed by all the European institutions and agencies. So there's plenty of material that it's there for you to use in the classroom. And something we can offer you as well is, well, you can subscribe to this newsletter that will alert you whenever there's a new material published on our website. So I would encourage you to use your phone now, enroll. We promise that we won't spam you. It's maybe a couple of times a year whenever there's something new coming out. If you could move to the next slide, Petar. Yeah, also something you can do is to visit us virtually or physically in Brussels. We offer free visits in our visitor center that is similar to the parliamentarium that someone talked about, and where your pupils can discover what the member states do in Brussels, and that there's not such a thing as Brussels, but it's actually their leaders, their countries that come, to the European capital and decide on certain things. And well, we have this visitor center, but we can also offer guided tours and tailored visits in this last case in 24 EU languages. So this is something to consider. You can contact us and then we'll see what is the best format and how we can organize an online or physical visit for you and your classroom. And just to finish the presentation, something you can do for older pupils in this case is also to subscribe to the Pulse, which is a newsletter that explains what the EU leaders are doing in Brussels in a simplified language. So why they are gathering, why they take some decisions, and on what topics. Sometimes there's also information about other issues, but this might be interesting to some of your secondary school pupils. And I think with this, we got to the end of our presentation. Don't hesitate to ask me or Peter any question you have, and you can also get in touch if you have any comment about the materials or if there's something you cannot find online. We'll be happy to get in touch. Thanks for listening. And yeah, this is a bit of a different presentation, but we hope that it gave you something useful to for your job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Here, thank you as well for offering this very practical also insight in how the resources work in practice. It's great to see that you have this newsletter also prepared for people to be alert. And also great to see that many of the materials deal as well with very practical cases of what is happening in Brussels. It's also interesting to hear because just Anna and Isabel were mentioning how they recently visited Brussels with their students. I believe it was last year. And so you also mentioned that possibility of visiting the institutions. So it's also great to see that that's being done in practice. So if you, those listening, have the chance, I think it's a fantastic opportunity as well to let your students know what is Brussels, because Brussels is not just a geographical, of course, point in the map. It's also more than that, as the resources that you've just presented also showcase. It's also great to see that they're also covering all ages as well, right? You mentioned from very early ages up until adults as well. So that also solves a bit the question that we've been having, what do we do with the younger students? How do we bring them in? So Gerard just presented some fantastic resources to bring in even the youngest of the students.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, we are humble, but Yuki is a great resource to teach to these younger kids. And maybe if I can add something that I forgot, is that every year we have the Europe Day in Brussels, and on that day, which usually is organized on a Saturday, you can visit any of the European institutions. It's open doors. There are plenty of great activities in the different European institutions, and it's usually an amazing chance to visit the city and get to know about the European Union. Otherwise, you know where to find us. So
Thanks, indeed, great point, and it's also coming up in just a couple of months, so maybe enough time to plan a little visit with your students on Europe Day. I think it's a phenomenal chance as well to be in Brussels on that day, since many activities are happening, and within Teach Europe as well. When we started the project a couple of years ago, and teachers like Joan, like Irene and Ana Maria that are also connecting today, also were in Brussels for Europe Day, so it was a great occasion to celebrate together. You also have the House of European History to visit with your students that also has a digital toolbox as well available. So many of the resources that we've discussed today that the Council has just presented, but as well the EU Learning Corner that we've mentioned, and as well the House of European History, you will see as well in the Module 4. So stay tuned next week to see all of these resources and all of the links that we have shared today, so you can have access to them and you can continue your learning journey beyond Teach Europe. We are not the only project, we are not the only resource repository for integrating a European perspective on the classroom. So I would like to thank so much the teachers and the team who presented today. So Anna, Isabel, Maria Cristina, Joan, Gerard, Peter, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I don't know if you would like to have any final thoughts or ideas before we start to close the session. In that case, well, I will just wrap up a little bit what I see on the Padlet. So thanks so much for, and those of you who are adding questions on the Padlet, and I see you very active and asking a lot of questions. I see a couple of, I can start answering and picking up a few of them, and Maria Elena, feel free to join me here as well. But I see there's a couple of questions, for example, concerning languages, so how to incorporate very specifically the learning scenarios into the context of French teaching. So there is a couple of learning scenarios that deal with foreign languages in the classroom, one of them with the statistics as well. So that's an idea. And also, as the teachers that presented today have suggested, you can also take the activities and adapt them and translate them into your own context. We also heard a lot about H's. So right now we heard about some other resources that you can use for teaching younger students. But again, once again, the learning scenarios are something that are highly flexible and adaptable to your own context. I think it's a great tip that also was shared by Anna, that indeed you can look at the activities that are included in the learning scenarios and pick and choose which one makes sense for your students' age and context, etc. Also, Joan has also mentioned how having a reduced group of students has also prompted her to develop a bit different activities within the learning scenario and kind of modifying the activities a little bit. Indeed, if the activity asks for students to be divided in group, perhaps if you already have a small group, then you can do activities in plenary and so on and so forth. I think there's a lot of questions as well that I see on the Padlet that have a lot to do with how to implement an European perspective in the classroom and how to deal with students in the classroom. So another recommendation that I can give to you is that when we present the learning scenarios in the within the module, you'll see that for each learning scenario we have two pages. One page that deals with the learning scenario itself, so what you find in the content, activities, and so on. And the second page that comes right after, that Maria Elena and I have called classroom practice, I believe. You can hear there and you can read a few testimonies of teachers like Maria Cristina, like Anna, like Isabel, like Joan, that have already implemented these learning scenarios, and we're quoting them directly on their experiences, their own experiences for implementing these learning scenarios. So I recommend that you check these sections of classroom practice so that you can get a bit of an insight on how it actually went for them, since we're using their own quotes here. And in some of the cases, you can also see pictures of the activities that the students kind of completed. Once again, you have 12 learning scenarios, so I recommend you to follow the instructions or the suggestions that we added in Module 1, which is that for each block of learning scenarios, you select one or two that make the most sense to your teaching context and figure out how you can adapt it if you need to adapt them. And by the end of the course, we expect that you more or less have become familiar with 3 of the learning scenarios. And if you have the time and there's still time in the academic calendar, you can choose out of these 3 that you have studied, you can choose to implement one in your classroom, and that way you're part of the teacher project. But once again, in the next module, you're going to hear a little bit more about um, other resources that you can use to continue implementing a European perspective on the classroom. Maria Elena, before we close, anything else? Any last recommendations, tips, feedback, advice that you have?
Uh, I have shared, I just shared something on the chat. I think maybe an advice coming from our side, from what we have seen, from what we have experienced so far, is that we strongly encourage everyone, all the teachers who participated in the MOOC and those who haven't and are interested in the topic, to be creative, be as much creative as possible. Use the learning scenarios and the resources that you can find online as a guide. You can always adjust them and adapt them to your own classroom settings. Don't be afraid to make changes, and make sure that they will fit your students' needs, your students' learning needs. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and I think that's a great reminder and very good last point. So thank you very much to all of you for joining us this afternoon. As we share the recording for this event will be available on the live events page of the course. In here, you will also find the recording from the previous webinar, as Maria Elena was sharing before. Also, when you go to the course, you also have another tab that is called Progress. So I think that right now we are halfway through the course. So it's time that you become familiar with the Progress tab of the course and you get a feedback and an understanding as well of where you are in the course and how far you've completed. A final reminder that the only activity that is compulsory for you to complete is the final assignment. So that's the activity where you complete the learning activity and the peer review that comes together with submitting your learning activity. All the rest activities, all of the Padlets and forums and discussions are only optional. And what we recommend is that you don't need to complete all of them. Perhaps you can pick and choose those that make the most sense with your learning journey as well. Final reminder before we close that the final deadline for the finalizing your activities is the 16th of April at midnight Central European time. So if you are in Romania, for example, like Maria Cristina, or you're in Portugal like Anna and Isabel, those are different timetables. So don't forget to make sure that you know that we're always talking of Central European time. So if you have any technical issues, make sure not to wait until the 16th of April, even if it's in the morning. Make sure that you resolve these technical issues in advance. You're going to have, there's a reminder on the course, you're going to find it there, of how to solve these technical issues. And you can contact our support team that they will be very happy to help you resolve them. So make sure that these technical issues are resolved in advance. And that is all for us. Once again, thank you very much. We hope that you're enjoying this learning journey. I'm going to stop recording right now. And thank you for all your contributions and all the activities that you have